Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed News Corner, coming at you again on this wonderful Friday evening, or I guess it will be the morning in some parts of the world. Hopefully by now you've all checked out Steve's big review of the Radeon VII. It's pretty interesting in my opinion, but ultimately I guess it's a bit of a disappointing product, though we should have a bit more on this card in a few days once we get a fresh set of drivers. So yeah, stay tuned for a bit more content on that. Today though, it's all about the news, so let's kick things off with a look at Radeon VII availability. So along with the review NDA expiring yesterday, February 7th was also the day the Radeon VII was supposed to go on sale for the general public. Previous AMD GPU launches, especially at the high end, have been plagued with extremely low availability, and it seems like this is the case once again. While the Radeon VII did hit retailers, stock was sold out almost immediately from all reports. Newegg still lists models from all the major board partners, all of which are the same, so there's really no reason to choose one over another. However, every model is now out of stock. As we mentioned in our review, we heard availability would be worse than the notoriously hard to find RTX 2080 Ti, and it seems this has panned out. If you want a Radeon VII right now, there's not even an option to pay an exorbitant premium to get one now. Instead, they are simply out of stock. In a statement to the tech report, AMD said demand for the Radeon VII is strong, and they are working with partners to restock throughout the next few days. They also said that ongoing supply for the Radeon VII is expected to arrive on a weekly basis to meet demand. So this could be one of those cases where AMD assesses the initial market with a very limited early run before deciding on how many to produce going forward. That said, with most reviews having a lukewarm reaction to AMD's new flagship gaming GPU, I'm not sure whether demand will continue to be strong in the next few weeks, with Nvidia's RTX 2080 offering better value at the same price point right now. Speaking of Nvidia, more information is emerging relating to the GeForce GTX 1660 Ti, which, as earlier rumors suggested, is supposed to launch next week on February 15th. It appears as if a number of overseas retailers have published board partner models a little earlier than they were supposed to, revealing a few extra tidbits about the upcoming GPU. The listings are for the MSI GTX 1660 Ti Gaming X and Armor OC models, as well as the Palette GTX 1660 Ti Storm X OC and non-OC models. Video cards took a snapshot of the very low resolution pictures of the cards provided with the listings, which look like standard board partner GPUs, I guess. The interesting information comes in clock speeds. We've already heard the 1660 Ti will have 1536 CUDA cores, but these listings seem to confirm a bit more. The Palette Storm X non-OC model in particular has revealed the stock core frequencies of 1500 MHz base and 1770 MHz boost. It also suggests the card's 6GB of GDDR6 memory will be clocked at 12 gigabits per second rather than 14 gigabits per second like the RTX 2060. Those specs, well, they're probably not all that useful right now because we still don't know how the card performs and we won't know until reviews go live. But considering this information comes from several retailer listings, it is likely to be accurate. Of course, with any early information, do take it with a grain of salt. This next story has been generating a bit of discussion around the PC community this week, not something I would normally talk about, but well, I guess let's do it anyway. SoftBank has sold off its entire stake in Nvidia. The company previously held a 4.9% stake, which when sold netted the company a cool $3.6 billion. This hasn't been a sudden decision from SoftBank. Rumors from December last year suggested the company was looking at selling their stake due to Nvidia's declining stock price. Apparently, SoftBank still made a profit overall due to buying Nvidia stock when it was even lower than it is right now, but as Nvidia keeps declining, they probably couldn't hold on to it much longer. And basically this is just continuing Nvidia's horror run over the last few months. 3D Mark has added support for DLSS to their Port Royal ray tracing benchmark. This is something I find a little bizarre, to be honest. I have nothing against DLSS in general. I think it's a very interesting idea, and I don't think the benefits are quite at the level Nvidia claims. Over time, it could become quite useful, and of course, we're still waiting on more games to support DLSS so we can investigate it further. But I don't think a benchmark tool should integrate a technology that's exclusive to one GPU vendor. I think the whole point of a benchmark tool is that it's not supposed to be optimized for one company's products or another. Instead, it's just supposed to offer an accurate reflection of how typical industry standard code will perform across a variety of hardware. The Port Royal benchmark uses the vendor agnostic DirectX ray tracing API, and that works with both Nvidia and AMD hardware, though with Nvidia's dedicated RT cores, it naturally runs a lot better on their GPUs right now. But DLSS, it's not something that works with AMD GPUs and presumably won't work in the future. You wouldn't expect a third-party benchmark tool to add in a whole bunch of GameWorks features that either work poorly on non-Nvidia hardware or just simply don't work at all. So I also wouldn't have expected a feature like DLSS to be added, but I guess it has, and that's hence my surprise a little bit here. I think it's a bit problematic because there's no guarantee that every game that supports ray tracing will also support DLSS. As ray tracing gathers wider adoption, some developers may choose to implement DXR without any specific libraries from AMD or Nvidia for going DLSS or other techniques. So to have this third-party benchmark that includes an Nvidia-specific optimization that will only apply in a handful of games doesn't really sit right with me. But if you are interested, I guess you can now download that update and test out DLSS for yourself. Anyway, moving on, we have a trio of new monitor launches over the last week. First up, we have the Philips Brilliance 499P9H, which is a 49-inch super ultra-wide monitor with a 5120 by 1440 resolution, aka double-wide 1440p. It's not a gaming-focused monitor, so it tops out at a 60Hz refresh rate, but it does use a VA panel, and it comes with a Display HDR 400 certification, though it doesn't include local dimming. It's also factory calibrated to a Delta E of below 2.0, and pricing is expected to be around $1,100 US. Then we have the LG 32UL750-W. This is a 32-inch flat VA panel at a 4K resolution with a 60Hz refresh rate, FreeSync, and Display HDR 600 certification. There's no word on local dimming, but I expect this isn't a feature, although the panel is good for 95% DCI-P3 coverage and 600 nits of peak brightness. It too is factory calibrated, it can work over USB-C, and should be priced around $750 US. And the third monitor is the AOC CQ32G1, and that's a new addition to their G1 gaming line. This is a fairly standard display, 32 inches, curved VA at 1440p with a 144Hz refresh rate and FreeSync, and I suspect it's using a similar panel to most others that pack these sorts of specs. It comes in at $395 in the US, which is a reasonable price. It's not necessarily the cheapest, but it's not a bad deal either. Into the quicker topics now, that crazy Gigabyte Z390 Aorus Extreme Waterforce motherboard that we looked at in News Corner, I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, that has an official price. And it's a crazily high price. If you want this Z390 board, which comes with a massive water block that covers the CPU socket, VRMs, and more, you'll have to fork out $900. Yes, $900 US. At least for that price, you'll also get a ton of RGB LEDs. EA shares have tanked after a poor financial report revealed disappointing sales of Battlefield 5, along with falling revenue in their mobile division. And what will please many gamers, the most hated company in gaming said Battlefield 5 missed their targets by 1 million copies. It still sold 7.3 million overall, but that wasn't enough, and it also didn't bring in as many Origin Premier subscribers as they had hoped. Lackluster sales are probably related to lackluster reception at launch with Battlefield 5, with many people complaining about the game launching in an unfinished state with too many missing pieces of content. EA stock took a dive after the report was released, although it has since recovered slightly. Unfortunately, for those praying for EA's demise, the success of recent release Apex Legends, along with the impending release of Anthem, will likely see the company's fortunes rise over the next month or so. Final topic for this week, it has been discovered that there are two variants of Intel's Core i5-9400 and Core i5-9400F. One variant, which uses the P0 stepping, is based on Intel's 8 8-core die and uses solder thermal interface material, or STIM. As the 9400 is a 6-core CPU, that variant does have 2 cores disabled, and of course the F model also has the iGPU disabled. The other variant with U0 stepping uses Intel's 6-core die and comes with regular thermal paste and with no cores disabled. Intel did confirm to Tom's Hardware that over time, the company will transition to solely using the P0 variant with solder, but initially some models will come with thermal paste depending on the location of manufacturing. And that's it for this week's NewsCon. As always, you can subscribe to get this segment usually every Friday. Consider supporting us on Patreon to get access to our Discord community, and I'll catch you in the next one.